The wind whispered through the barren fields as Clara Matthews steered her car down the dirt road, kicking up clouds of dust. She had come here chasing a story, one that had eluded every journalist before her: the legend of the crooked farmer. The farm was infamous in the region, spoken of in hushed tones in diners and bars. People claimed it was cursed, and that those who ventured there seldom returned. Clara dismissed the tales as mere superstition, eager to uncover the truth behind the folklore. She parked her car at the edge of the farm, stepping out into the cool evening air. The place was eerily quiet, save for the occasional rustle of wind through the cornfields. The farmhouse loomed in the distance, its silhouette crooked and leaning, as though the very earth beneath it had grown tired of supporting its weight. As she approached, a figure emerged from the shadows. The man was tall and wiry, his face obscured by the brim of a battered hat. He leaned against a rusted pitchfork, watching her with unsettling stillness. "You lost, miss?" he drawled, his voice low and gravelly. "No, I'm Clara Matthews. I'm a journalist," she said, forcing a smile. "I'm writing about local legends, and your farm has quite the reputation." The man tipped his hat back, revealing a face as weathered as the land itself. Deep lines etched his skin, and his eyes were sharp and piercing, like they could see straight through her. "Legends, huh?" he said with a smirk. "You'll find plenty of stories here. You're welcome to stay the night if you're brave enough." The invitation sent a shiver down Clara's spine, but she couldn't turn back now. She nodded and followed him into the house. The interior was surprisingly tidy, though the decor seemed frozen in time. Faded wallpaper, an old rotary phone, and an antique clock ticking loudly in the silence. The farmer introduced himself as Amos, and over a dinner of stew that tasted strangely metallic, he began recounting the history of the farm. "This land's been in my family for generations," Amos said, "but it's never been kind to us. The soil's cursed, they say. Can't grow nothing decent without help." "Help?" Clara asked, leaning forward. Amos's gaze darkened. "You'll see." That night, unable to sleep, Clara decided to explore. She grabbed her flashlight and crept outside, drawn to the cornfields that seemed to stretch endlessly into the darkness. The stalks were unnaturally tall, their leaves a sickly shade of green that glistened as though wet. As she walked deeper into the field, the air grew colder. The flashlight beam flickered, casting erratic shadows on the ground. She froze when she heard it, a low rhythmic sound, like a heartbeat, pulsing beneath her feet. Clara knelt and pressed her hand to the soil. It was warm and damp, and the heartbeat grew louder, reverberating through her body. She recoiled, her stomach churning with unease. A sudden rustling made her whip around. The corn stalks parted, and she caught a glimpse of something, an emaciated figure, its skin pale and stretched taut over its bones. It moved with unnatural speed, disappearing into the shadows before she could get a better look. Heart pounding, Clara stumbled back to the farmhouse. Amos was waiting for her on the porch, a cigarette glowing between his fingers. "You went to the fields," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "I told you, the soil's cursed." Clara demanded answers, but Amos simply smiled, his teeth yellowed and sharp. "You'll understand soon enough," he said, before retreating into the house. Determined to uncover the truth, Clara searched the farmhouse the next day while Amos worked in the fields. In a locked cabinet, she found a leather-bound journal, its pages filled with frantic, scrawled writing. The journal belonged to Amos's grandfather, who described a series of failed harvests that nearly drove the family to ruin. Desperate, the man turned to an old book of forbidden rituals. One night, he spilled his own blood into the soil, calling forth a being that promised prosperity in exchange for sacrifices. The pact worked, the crops flourished, the farm prospered, but the price was steep. The being demanded a constant supply of fertilizer, the bodies of travelers, drifters, and anyone foolish enough to linger too long. Clara's hands trembled as she read the final entry. "The earth remembers. The deal cannot be broken. The farm will feed, or it will starve. A loud crash from outside snapped her out of her thoughts. She ran to the window and saw Amos dragging someone, toward the barn. Clara followed at a distance, keeping to the shadows. She peeked through a crack in the barn door and stifled a gasp. The floor was covered in dark stains, and in the center was a gaping hole in the ground, pulsing with that same heartbeat she had felt in the fields. Amos stood at the edge, holding a struggling man. He muttered an incantation before pushing the man into the pit. The ground quivered, and the heartbeat grew louder, accompanied by grotesque squelching sounds. Before Clara could move, Amos turned and locked eyes with her. "Curiosity killed the cat," he said, grabbing her by the arm. Clara fought back, kicking and screaming, but Amos was unnaturally strong. He dragged her toward the pit as the ground opened wider, revealing a writhing mass of roots and tendrils, glistening with viscous fluid. With a surge of adrenaline, Clara broke free, grabbing a nearby pitchfork and plunging it into Amos's shoulder. He howled in pain, and she seized the moment to run. The field seemed endless as she sprinted, the heartbeat chasing her like a drumbeat of doom. She reached her car and fumbled with the keys, finally starting the engine and speeding away. In her rearview mirror, she saw the farmhouse sink into the ground, swallowed by the very earth that had cursed it. But the fields remained, their sickly green glow a haunting reminder of what she had escaped. Clara published her story, but no one believed her. The farm became a local legend once more, its land avoided by everyone who knew better. Yet late at night, Clara still hears the heartbeat in her dreams, and she knows the farm is waiting, hungry and patient, for its next victim.